Well, hey everybody, welcome, I think I made the camera shake, welcome to this updated setup guide for the Eachine Wizard X220. In this setup guide, I am going to basically be holding your hand and walking you through how to set this little guy up and get it up and running. If you just got your Wizard X220 and you took it out of the box and you plug the battery in and you're like, why isn't it working? What's happening? Well, this video is probably for you. This is going to help you a lot. Even if you don't have the exact same setup, it's probably going to be very helpful in terms of learning about how to go about setting stuff up and troubleshooting. Speaking of troubleshooting, I will leave the links for all of the manuals in the description below. Also, these are my notes that I'm going to be working through. They look something like this. I'll put those up on the screen so you can have those if you work better like that. The original setup guide, the previous setup guide, was using CleanFlight, and a lot of people were like, dude, why are you using CleanFlight? And I still maintain that CleanFlight, you won't notice any performance differences as a beginner, but nonetheless, not many people use CleanFlight anymore, and so I want to make this video to explain how to set it up on BetaFlight. And also, there have been some changes from the original setup guide, some different things that you need to do, some stuff that you don't need to do. So I want to make a new setup guide, and I'm going to show you how to get this guy in the air. Now, do take note that this is the original Wizard X220. So it's using the SP Racing F3 flight controller. In fact, right now, let's talk about the items that we're going to be using. We're going to be using the flight controller on the original Wizard X220, so not the Wizard X220S. I think that's an omnibus flight controller. Anyway, we are using the SP Racing F3 flight controller. We're going to be using the Flysky i6X radio, the transmitter. We're also going to be using the Flysky X6B or FS-X6B receiver, which is also connected in here. And we're going to be using S.BUS protocol to connect these. I had been using i6Bus, like the other setup guide was i6Bus, but right now i6Bus isn't working for me for some reason. I'm not sure if it's just because of the firmware or what's going on, but it was working actually. But the failsafe on i6Bus was not working properly. But listen, you don't need to use i6Bus. You can use S.BUS. It's going to be just as good for your purposes. So I'm going to show you how to set this up with S.BUS, and I'll show you how to set it up with i6Bus too. There's like a few clicks difference, but just something to be aware of. And one caveat, I guess, caveat, is that some of this stuff is like personal preference. For me, there's more than one way to skin a cat or a rabbit or pretty much anything. So other people might have their ways that they like to set up their quadcopters or something like that. So, but this is just a way that I found that works for me. And what I have done, what this video is designed to do, is simplify the whole process and make it as easy as possible for you to get up in the air and flying around and inevitably crashing. And listen, there are a lot of other, all kinds of things that you can change with the BetaFlight configurator for your quadcopter. I'm just going to touch on pretty much the bare minimum to get you up in the air, and that way you can once you actually learn how to fly, then all those other things, all those other features, you can go back and you can change. You can change rates, you can change PIDs, you can change all kinds of stuff. Anyway, enough talking. Let's get into this. I'm excited. Here we go. Step one. So you have your quadcopter here. First thing we want to do is we want to take off the propellers. We don't want those on while we're working on it. And we want to pop off, unscrew this top plate here. Now, mine might look a little bit different from yours because I've had this for a little while and it's kind of beat up, and I've made some modifications. But for our purposes, it is exactly the same. So here we have our we have our receiver here. This is the X6B receiver, and it's connected to our flight controller right here. Now I'm just gonna can I zoom in on here? Oh yeah, ooh, I can. Okay, so we're zoomed in. Okay, take a look at this arrow. See the direction that the arrow is pointing? This is important because that tells you the orientation of the flight controller board. So mine is pointing like sideways because the camera's pointing forward, and mine is pointing to the left. If you were, from this perspective, it's pointing left. So just take note of where yours is pointing. If yours is pointing a different direction, then follow these steps accordingly. So, in any case, so with the arrow pointing in that direction, to the left of the arrow is this connector. This is the IO2 connector. Again, I'll leave links in the manual. Anyway, this is the IO2 connector. This is where you want to connect your receiver. Okay, and this also has to do with UART3. Remember that. So UART3 is at IO2 connector. That'll come up later. So on the receiver here, you'll notice it actually says right there, it says i.BUS, but it's not just i.BUS, it actually works fine with S.BUS also. Now, you may need to, depending on what came with your receiver, you may need to fashion your own connector, just so that, or you can buy one, or just so that you have basically a three-pronged connector from here to here. Or it doesn't have to be just three here, but you just need only three wires on this side. So what I did is I think I went back and I actually soldered these, but originally I have a video explaining how to do this. I will put that in the link right over there, and or in the description. Oh, and one more thing, do take note right here that there are two buttons. One says update and the other says bind. This outermost one is the bind button, and we're going to need to have access. It's really good to have access to that all the time in case you need to rebind your transmitter to your receiver, but just keep in mind that that is a button we're going to need to be pressing in a little while. Actually like right now. And once you do that, we're ready to move on to the transmitter. Okay, now that you have your receiver connected to your flight controller, what we're going to do now is actually bind the receiver to our radio. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our radio, we're going to get a battery here, and at this point do make sure that your video transmitter, your VTX, has an antenna connected to it, because otherwise it could kind of get too hot and burn up, and we don't want that. You could damage it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that bind button that I showed you, and we're going to, it's a little tricky, but you got to press it down, and I'm going to hold this here, and we're going to connect power to it while we're pressing it down, like that. And we should get a fast blink. You see that? It's blinking very fast. So that means it's ready to bind. Then we're going to get our transmitter on a fresh model setting here, and then we're going to hold down the bind button, turn it on. It says binding, and then bam, it's bound. So the light goes from a blinking to a steady light. You can see there, and then we are bound. Great. Now we can unplug the battery and set this aside, because now we just need to configure stuff in our transmitter. Alright, now we're going to set up our transmitter. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set the failsafe. Now, if you haven't used this transmitter before, it's kind of weird, but the what you do, so to get into the main menu, you press and hold OK, and then you have system setup, and then you have function setup. Okay, so then we're gonna use the up and down keys to scroll, and then later on, or when we need to, we're gonna press and hold cancel to save. I'll show you how to do that. So we're gonna go into the system setup, and then we're gonna scroll down to RX setup, and then we're going to go down to failsafe. Now, technically the failsafe shouldn't really do anything for this radio, because it's mainly going to be all inside the quadcopter, but I think it's just a really good practice to set your throttle failsafe to 0, so that just as an extra backup, and definitely always with planes. Anyway, so then we're going to go into the failsafe for channel 3, because that's our throttle, and we can tell because when we move the stick, we can see it move on the display. So we want our stick all the way down. We're going to select up or down to change it to on, and then we're going to press and hold cancel, and you can see there it says -100%. That's what we want, and then we press and hold cancel again, and then that saved it. I like to go back in, make sure that it did save. It did. Very good. Now we're going to let's see. We're going to go back into RX setup. We're going to scroll down to output mode, and so you can either select PWM, PPM, i.BUS, or S.BUS. We're going to select S.BUS here, and as far as I know, it does not matter whether it's PWM or PPM on the other side. But I could be wrong, but I have not noticed any difference. And then we're going to press and hold cancel, and then again go back in and make sure it stayed. Okay, S.BUS, that's what we want. Fantastic. Now what we're going to do, we're still in the system menu, we're going to scroll down to aux switches, okay, and you want to make sure that all of your aux switches are on and it's set to channel 10, which this already was, but if it's not, do that. Okay, we're going to go back, let's go into the menu here. Now we're going to go to the function setup menu. We're going to scroll down to aux channels. Okay, so we're going to go into our aux channels, and what we're doing is we're actually assigning our aux channels to our switches here, okay? So here when it says channel 5, because we have channels 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and so the rest of these are going to be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so later, like in BetaFlight, when it refers to aux 1, it's talking about channel 5 because that's the first auxiliary channel after these 4 channels. Anywho, so we're going to go in here and we can see we want, what I like to do, this is up to you, personal preference. I like to have it be channel 5, channel 6, channel 7, channel 8, and then channel 9 and channel 10. That's just the way I like it. You're welcome to do it however you like. So I'm going to put channel 5 as switch A because these are actually assigned. This is A, B, C, D according to this transmitter. Switch A, switch B, switch C, switch D, and then you have variable A and variable B. So I'm going to make channel 5 switch A, channel 6 I'm going to make it switch B. Let me make sure you can actually see that. I'm going to make channel 7 switch D, or C rather. I'm going to make channel 8 switch D, so we have A, B, C, D. Then once we get to channel 9, that's going to be variable A and variable B. I'm going to press and hold cancel. I'm going to go back in and make sure it stayed like how I wanted it to. I'm going to use OK to scroll through these different ones. So A, B, C, D, variable A, and variable B. That's just the way I like it set up, and it seems to work well for me. And that's what I'm going to be referencing throughout this setup guide. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to get a new browser, and it used to be, BetaFlight used to be on the Chrome store, or it used to be a Chrome app, but it is no longer a Chrome app. So what we want to do is we want to go to let's see, we want to go to GitHub, and I already have the URL in here, so we're going to go to GitHub. Okay, so we are now in GitHub, and I will have this link in the description. And currently it's BetaFlight 10.2.0, but just download whichever one is the newest for you. Which one do I need? Well, I have set Windows 10, so I need Win32EX. So installer Win32EX right there. I'm going to click that one. And this is very simple. It's just like downloading any sort of software from the internet. So it has downloaded. I'm going to say open. So I'm going to open this installer. I'm not sure if it is recording this or not. I'm not sure if the screen recorder is working to show what is happening right now. I don't know. I hope that's showing up on the screen recorder. Okay, so basically then just follow the instructions to download that, and you say a little thing will pop up, and it will say, do you want to install this? And you say yes, and then it says, welcome to the Setup Wizard. And you read through that, and you agree to that. If you agree, just hit install, and then it goes computing. And it's doing its thing and installing. Wow, that was fast. Alright, and finish. And the BetaFlight configurator should pop up. Once you get it downloaded, go ahead and open it up and run the BetaFlight configurator and get to that main BetaFlight screen. Alright, once you are into the BetaFlight main configurator, you'll notice down here, if you can see my mouse, right there, where it says drivers, the latest CP210X drivers can be downloaded from here. Now, in my previous video, not to confuse you, but in my previous video, you also needed to download this driver as well. This is the STM USB VCP driver, and they can, and there's a link there as well. And that's a little bit annoying because you have to like give them your email address and then they send you a link to download it. It's not that big of a deal, but now with my version of Windows, I don't have to do that. So if you have the newest version of Windows, mine is, well, it's Windows 10 something something. Then you may not need to do that, but if you find it's not working, then you may need to go and download that driver. But in this case, we're just going to download the CP210X driver, and we're going to click on this link, and it will take us to a new window. This is the link that you click on. It will take you here, and we're just going to scroll down, and so we need to find the version for our computer. For me, I'm going to select the Windows 10 Universal, but there are several other options available. So let's see, this top one right here. So I'm going to click Download VCP, and it is now downloading. Okay. And we're going to just open that one. So let's see, yeah, just open. So now I'm going to open this one. And let's see, I'm not sure if you can see this. Can you see this? You probably can't. So in case you can't see this, I'm going to describe it to you. So you're going to click on it. It's going to open in a in a window. You're going to click on the folder CP210X Universal Windows Driver. Double click on that. And then we're going to go and we're going to click on there are two applications. It opens up a big folder with a bunch of different things, and there are two that say CP210X VCP installer _ X64, and then there's another one that's _ X86. I believe you're going to want X64. I think it depends on your machine. So I'm going to double click on X64. It says that we need to extract the files, so we're going to click Extract All, and then we're just going to click Extract again. Okay, and then it's going to bring up a new window that looks just like the last one, but we're going to double click on CP210X Universal Windows Driver again, and then again I'm going to click on the CP210X VCP installer _ X64. Okay, and now it says, do you want to allow this app to make changes to your device? And I say, yes, I do. And then it brings up an installation wizard thing, and I'm just going to go through that. And wow, it already installed it. That was fast. And then just click Finish. Okay, and that's all there is to it. So sorry if you couldn't see that, but hopefully it was pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory, and I think I was able to kind of guide you along through it. Now we're ready to hook up our quad. Okay, now we are ready. Hopefully we did everything correctly and it's going to work. We're ready to connect our quad to the computer. We're going to use a regular what is this? Micro mini USB to what is this? Micro USB? I don't know, but you know, there are so many. Point is, the important thing is that you want to make sure that you get a cable that is not just for charging. You want to get one that is for data. I've done some research, and apparently there's not really any good way to positively identify which is which. But basically, if you have a cable that will work to connect to your phone, well, in my case, a Samsung Galaxy S7 to your computer, then it will work for data and not just for charging. So that could be one of the reasons why if you connect it to your computer and it does not work, you may have an incorrect USB cable. So we're gonna plug this end into the quad, this end into the computer. So what we're gonna do now is basically we're going to update this flight controller like you do an update on your phone. So we're going to flash the latest firmware onto this flight controller. Now this flight controller, you need to put it into bootloader mode in order for it to flash. So you'll notice on the board right here where my finger is pointing, you will see two little holes, and then the word boot next to it, right there. Well, that is where what we need to do is we need to basically have a jumper go between those two holes. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a paper clip and bend it. It doesn't have to be this small, it could be larger, but if it is covered in plastic, you got to remove the plastic from the ends, and we're going to insert this paper clip into those two holes before we plug this in here, so that way we can flash it. So let's do that right now. So I know when I first heard this I was like, what? You've got to be kidding me. It's a little strange. I'm going to use pliers to try and just kind of fit this in there gently. Just going to put that in one hole and then just get it in there. There we go. Yeah, so now we have a jumper. All it's really doing is just connecting the two holes and basically shorting between them. Okay, so now that we have the bootloader jumper in there, what we're going to do is we're going to connect to our computer. Let me see here. We're going to connect our USB port. Okay, and our computer says, I gotcha. Red light. Okay, notice that the red light on the flight controller should be off, so there should not be any red light on there, and that means that it is in bootloader mode and it is ready to be flashed. Okay, so now we're going to go over to our BetaFlight main page here. You'll see on the left-hand side there's a firmware flasher. We're going to click on that. It's going to load all this stuff here. And let's see. I already have it in here because I flashed this before, but you're going to select, first you're going to select your board here, and we want the SP Racing F3. You'll notice there are, my computer's being so slow. You'll notice there are various versions of, like there's SP Racing F3 and then different ones, Evo and whatnot, but you just want the straight up SP Racing F3, and then the firmware, usually you just want the latest firmware, and these are going to be stable versions, meaning that they've tested them pretty good and they're most likely to work well. Oh, that's weird. Okay, there we go. Now they're loaded. Huh. That was strange. All right, so this one currently it's 3.3.2 for this board, but you know, whatever the most recent one is, you'll probably want to go with that. And then we're going to click Load Firmware down here at the bottom of the screen. Click Load Firmware. And now, let's scroll all the way down, and you can see Loaded Firmware here. And then all this is there's other useful information about this version of firmware, and warnings, be careful about certain stuff, and then recovery, lost communication. So good stuff to know, especially if you need to do some troubleshooting. We're going to click Flash Firmware. And we can see that it is flashing. And I've had actually really good success using this version of BetaFlight and all this stuff lately. So it seems to be, it's usually 100% successful for over the times that I've used it. So it's flashing and it's loading, and pretty soon it will be ready to go. Too much of your precious. All right, programming successful. Notice the red light is blinking, and sweet, programming successful. Excellent. Excellent. So now I'm just going to go back to the main page there. And then now we can disconnect our quadcopter from the computer. We're going to take out this bootloader pin because we only need this when we're flashing the firmware. Then we can reconnect. Okay, notice now there is a red light that's blinking, and the blue light is steady. And our computer registered it. So now we're going to go back to the BetaFlight main screen, and we're going to click in the top right corner, Connect. And let's see if it actually connects. Kabam! All right, so we have connected. That means that we have done everything right so far, and the flash has been successful. Excellent. Now we're ready to start doing the fun stuff. All right, now we are in BetaFlight. Fantastic. Now the first thing we're going to do right here on this main page is we're going to click Calibrate Accelerometer. That's going to let us know well, you want it to be on a level surface, first of all, and that's going to tell the quad that, hey, this is level, so when you put it in auto level mode, this is what it's going to go to. If you calibrate it and it's like sideways, then it's going to be off. Now, notice we can move our quad around and we get a representation of what the quad is doing. Now, right now, it's not working properly because it's going, when we pull back, it wants to go to the left, and when we pitch to the right, it wants to go back, and so it's like, what? That's weird. That's because we need to change the configuration of the board, which we're going to do in a second. But just to note that that's how you can tell what your quadcopter is doing, and you should get response from that. If not, something isn't working right. Okay, next we're going to go to the ports tab right here, and under serial RX, under that column, we're going to go down to UART3, and we're going to select that to on. We're going to click Save and Reboot. Okay. Now we're going to go down to the Configuration tab. So, under the Board and Sensor Alignment box right here, under yaw degrees, we're going to put 270. You can also put -90, but just it doesn't really matter. So you can just put 270. And what that's doing, in case you're interested, is that it's basically electronically changing the direction that the flight controller is mounted. So right now it's mounted in this direction. So what it's basically doing is rotating it so that this arrow, so that it thinks it's pointing forward the way the quad is built in that sense. So that's going to make sure that when we say that we want it to go to the right, it's going to go to the right. So arming, in this box right here, arming box, we want to put 180. What that's going to do is it's going to allow you to arm your quad, which in case you don't know, means that the motors will spin up, and that makes it so that the throttle is active, so you can actually fly, and the motors will start spinning to let you know that it's armed. And this is good because that way, if you are not perfectly level, or if you're upside down in a tree and you need to arm your quad to find it to make some noise, then that's very, very helpful. Okay, next we're going to go down to the receiver box here, and we're going to click on the receiver mode, and we're going to select serial-based receiver here. And then this other box, or little scroll thing, is going to pop up. And then what we want to do is select S.BUS. And there are all these different kinds. Now, if you wanted to try and use i.BUS, what you would do is you would select i.BUS here instead of S.BUS. i.BUS is right there. And then what you would do is you would just select i.BUS on your in your transmitter. You would change that to i.BUS output. And that's really the only difference in terms of that. You don't need to connect anything differently, as far as I know. So S.BUS, we want S.BUS right there, and I think that's it. That's it, right? Yeah, that's it. That's it for now. And then you have all these other features. Well, not all of them. Some are for other different types of boards. We're going to click Save and Reboot. It says Saved, Rebooting, and it's ready to go. All right, next we're going to go down to the Failsafe tab. If you haven't already, go up to the top right corner and click Enable Expert Mode, because that's going to make the failsafe show up on here on this tab. Now the failsafe should already be set up in the probably the configuration that you'll want, but it's always good to check, and this is where you can change the failsafe things, so that if you lose connection with your transmitter, this determines what the quad will do after that. Now you do want to be very careful. Make sure you know what you're doing when you're changing these things, because that could be the difference between your quad just turning off and falling out of the sky, or maybe it powers all the way up and you never see it again or something. So right now, currently, stage 2 failsafe procedure is set to drop. So basically, if you lose connection, if you fly out of range or behind a building or something, you lose connection with your quad is just going to drop to the ground. That's probably the simplest option, and that way you know that even though it's going to fall straight out of the sky and might hit the ground kind of hard, at least you'll know that it's not going to fly somewhere else. But in any case, the simplest thing to do is just set it to drop. So that's what it's on right now. We're going to click Save and Reboot. Okay, and then we're going to go down to the PID tuning tab. Now let's see here. So, all right, so the PID tuning tab, we're not going to mess with the PIDs at all. That's much more advanced stuff. Don't worry about that. But on the RC rate right here, look, honestly, I'm not really sure what is a good rate for beginners because it's been a long time since I was learning how to fly, and everybody's kind of different. So, what I don't know. I was just playing around with it, and it seems like with the RC rate, if we change that, let me just delete that and change it to, I'm going to change that to 1.5. Oh, well, delete that, 1.5. And I'm going to change the yaw also to, let's see, 1.5. Okay. And then the super rate, we are going to set to 0. Because I think that as a beginner, the super rate is going to get you in trouble because what that basically means is that on the outer edge of the sticks, on the outer edge of the travel of the sticks, it jumps up in degrees of rotations per second. I mean, the speed, the rate jumps up. So that could get really confusing if you're trying to learn how to fly like that. So I would just err on the side of having really docile controls, and don't try to do loops and flips and rolls and stuff when you're just learning how to fly. Just keep it straight and level. We're going to change this to, we're going to change it to 0.7. Now 0.7, that's pretty high on the X.BUS. What the X.BUS is going to do is it's going to soften the center of the stick. You can kind of see from this graph here, it makes it less sensitive towards the center of the stick. So if you think about moving your stick, around the center, not a whole lot is going to happen as much as when you move it out here. Then more is going to start to happen. So this might feel mushy. If it feels mushy, just lower the X.BUS. If it feels like you're just being too jerky on the controls, then maybe increase the X.BUS. Okay, great. And that's all for the PID tuning section. We're going to click Save. And again, you can change all these things. These are just the RC rate, the super rate, and the RC X.BUS. And you can see here that it's 300 degrees per second. So it's going to take you a little over a second to do one roll. So don't try to do rolls and flips close to the ground with these particular rates. But I think this will be good for just learning how to fly and control your quad. All right, enough said. Now we're going to go over to the receiver. So receiver, what we need to do is we actually need to turn on our transmitter here. Let's go over to our transmitter. We're going to turn it on. Okay. And then we are going to connect the battery, where'd that go? Here it is, to our quadcopter to establish connection with the receiver, because the receiver does not get powered by the USB. So now we are going to connect this, and always remember our propellers are off. Okay, very good. Okay, that's connected. And now, let's see, and we should be getting, are we having any connection? Okay, we're having connection issues. So let's see, let's try that again. Let me turn the transmitter off, turn it back on. There we go. Now it's connected. Okay. So sometimes, I don't know, I think it might have been too close to the receiver, but if it doesn't work, just turn it back off and then turn it back on again and check it. All right, first thing we want to do is just check the channel map and make sure that the channel map says ATER1234, and that should be correct. I found that is the correct one for Flysky. There are others though, just depending on like your brand of transmitter. And then what we want to do, now it looks like this is necessary, and I'm not totally sure, to be honest with you, why this is, but in this instance, so you can see here, this preview of our quad, it's spinning. Why is it spinning? The controls are centered. What is going on? You'll notice here we have these bars, these tabs on the BetaFlight. We have roll, pitch, yaw, throttle, and then all the channels. These are our channels. And notice you have aux1, aux2, aux3, aux4. And aux1, like I said before, is channel 5, aux2 is channel 6, aux3 is channel 7, etc. Well, that's because they are centered, the sticks are centered physically on the transmitter, but as you can see here in the channels, okay, so 1500 is that's our center. when these numbers should be at 1500, that means that the sticks are actually centered. Okay, so, but they're not. They're at like 520. So what we need to do is we need to go into our transmitter here, and we need to go into the system. We need to go into the function setup. Okay, and then we need to go down to subtrim. We need to go into subtrim. And then we have channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, and channel 4. Now notice that as I change the trim here, see, look at the bars like on the roll, the top, the red bar, the numbers are changing. You can see as I change the trim here, as I change the trim to the left. So we want to adjust the sub trim to get that roll number to 1500. What I like to do is just kind of bump the sticks so that they kind of resettle and make sure that they're in the right spot. So now that's good. Let's move on to the next one, channel 2. Let's bring that down to 1500. And one more. There we go. Okay. We're gonna skip channel 3. That's our throttle. That's well within the range, so I'm not too concerned about that right now. And channel 4, because these are actually like our flight controls, so we're going to bring channel 4 down as well. Bring it, oh, went too far. And channel 4 is what is essentially our rudder. Okay, good. So now it's centered. So on this little preview screen here, notice that our quad stopped moving. Now this stuff is kind of moving choppily because my computer is slow, but you can see that, well, maybe there's a big lag. In any case, yeah, there's a big delay, but it stopped moving. It stopped rolling on its own. So if you need to do that, also check. It's a little harder to check when it's going so slowly, but check and see if any of the channels need to be reversed. Just give the sticks a little tap and make sure that they go in the direction like I want it to go forward. So I tap forward, and eventually it will, there we go. So it goes forward. And anyway, in any case, the point is the controls are going in the right directions, and we don't need to reverse anything. Oh, that's our quadcopter. It beeps. This is actually a great feature of the quadcopter because it beeps after, I think, 5 or 10 minutes of being turned on, and this will help you find it should you lose it somewhere. So what we're going to do, if everything is working like how it should be, we're going to click Save. Oh, and one really important thing is before you leave the subtrim page, press and hold Cancel to save it, and then go back and check and make sure. We're going to move on to the Modes tab. So I still have the quadcopter plugged in and the transmitter. Transmitter is connected to, the transmitter has a connection to the receiver, so the receiver is being powered through the quadcopter because we want to have our transmitter working. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select an arm switch. Now this is just my personal preference, but I like it to be aux1, which is this switch right here, this far left switch, which is switch A or channel 5 or aux1. It's all the same thing. And notice how when I flip the switch, there's a little hash mark, it's a little yellow hash mark, and it moves. So what we want to do is take this scroll bar and move it when I want it to be armed, which is the up position. I want it to be in the up position. I'm going to move it so that the hash mark falls within this bar, and that's down, and that's disarmed, and then up is armed. And I'll touch on that about the arming safety stuff in a moment. Okay, next we have angle mode. So angle mode is so default is acro mode, which means it's not self-leveling. You have total control of the quadcopter. You have to be flying it pretty much 100% of the time. But angle mode is when it will auto level. It won't hold its position, but it will auto level. I'm going to make that switch. I'm going to make that switch aux3. Now notice aux3 is currently, I have it as the 3 position switch. Okay, so the hash mark moves in 3 different spots. So the way I want to have it is I'm going to have it so that auto level is at the very bottom position, so that when I turn on the quad and all the switches are down, it will be in auto level mode. So that happens to fall at the right here. And if you wanted these little hash marks to be opposite, to move opposite, I don't know why you would, but you could just reverse this channel on the transmitter. In any case, we want the bar to fall, or the hash mark to fall in the bar when the switch is in the bottom position. Now, the next one that we're going to want to set up, and actually the last one, is down here, air mode. Okay. I have a short video explaining what air mode is, but I think I would like to explain it again more in depth in another video. But basically, it's useful. Basically, it's useful, but not when you're first learning. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it so that when this 3-position switch, which is aux3, is in the topmost position, that is when air mode will be on. And air mode is just like acro mode, but like a little bit extra, basically. Again, I'll talk about that later on as well. So that's all we're going to set up right now: arm, angle, and air mode. We're going to click save. That's it for now. So once we save it, we're going to go to the top right corner and click disconnect. All right, cool. So now we can disconnect our quad and test some things out before we get it up in the air. Now, before I put everything back together and we go out and fly it, there are 3 more things that I want to just cover. Most importantly, we want to test our fail-safe, okay? So the way that we're going to do that, we're going to, all right, with our transmitter on, we want to connect our quadcopter with the battery here. Okay, make sure everything's clear of the motors here. Now, when we flip our arm switch up, the motors will start up. And sometimes, if it's like being weird, like it was just there, and it doesn't start, just like give it a second, flip it again. Electronics, I'll tell you what. Okay, cool. So they are all spinning, and they should all be spinning in the right direction. They should all be spinning like inward, like that. That shouldn't be a problem. If it is, leave a comment below, and we can probably help you with that. Okay. So what we want to do to test it out is we want to arm it, raise the throttle, and then we're going to shut it off. Or we're just going to turn off our transmitter so it no longer is getting a signal from our transmitter. So we're going to raise the throttle. We're going to turn it off. There we go. And that's what you want. You want the motors to shut off, no more than like 2 or 3 seconds after that, because this is set to drop with the settings that we have. And once we turn it back on, sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. Once you turn everything back on, sometimes you can start it up. Like that, there we go. But sometimes, I don't know, sometimes it hasn't been able to start it up until I unplug the battery from the quad and then reboot everything. Okay, good. So that is working. That's the most important thing. Okay, so the other thing is air mode. And the thing with air mode basically is that I think it gives you better control over your quadcopter, and especially at low throttle. But here's the thing: with the way it is, it could cause your quad to bounce if you hit the ground or hit anything hard. It will bounce because basically the sensor is sensing that it is hitting a force. Something is forcing it to in one direction, and it wants to spin up the propellers to counteract that force. So then if you land really hard, your quadcopter might continually bounce and then just like start freaking out. So that's why on this 3-position switch, the top one is air mode and then the middle one is regular acro mode. I would recommend just starting off with regular acro mode. Don't bother with air mode because you're going to be landing hard when you're first learning how to fly. Trust me. So in my other video, in the original setup guide, what I did was I made it so that when all the switches were up, that was like normal, and it was like down to fly, down to turn on the switch. I realized that I really don't like that. Mainly, the main reason, which brings me to this other point, is just that you need to be ready to disarm your quad very quickly. So what I like to do is I like to use my thumbs right now. So I use my thumbs, and then I have my finger on the switch. So if I get into a bad situation, I just disarm it really fast, or I hit something, I don't know where I'm going, or I feel like I'm out of control. I just hit disarm, the quad will drop to the ground. That's very, very, very Very important, okay? And just always make sure that you disarm your quadcopter whenever you're handling it, or don't leave it armed. Just always have it disarmed unless you're ready to fly. So one of the things that I've been learning lately, a good habit to have is to turn on, a safe habit for safety, is to turn on your transmitter. And in this case, it says all the switches have to be up, okay? But we know that up is armed. So what I do, switches go up, switches go down, okay? And then I connect the battery to the quad. So as soon as the quad powers up, it's getting a signal from the transmitter, okay? So then I can just do the whole arming thing. Then when I'm done flying, I disconnect the quad battery. You want to disconnect the quad battery first, and then shut off your transmitter. Don't shut off your transmitter before you disconnect your quad. Now, nothing should happen, but it increases the likelihood that your quad could just like spaz out if something is wrong, or something is not working properly. But that's the point of the fail-safes. So I think it's just a good habit to have, but mainly when we turn on our transmitter, switches go up, switches go down. And that's just because this Flysky transmitter, for some reason, wants you to turn the switches to the up position when on startup. So what I just do, switches up, switches down, and then we're ready to go. And then I'm up to acro mode, up to arm, that whole thing. All right, so now you are ready to get everything bundled up together, get some propellers on here, and go and do a line of sight test. Just fly some line of sight stuff, do some hovering, see how it handles. And when you fire this baby up for the first time and you do some line of sight hover tests, just be sure to stand back. Don't stand really close to it. Don't get this thing near your face. Stand back at least 15 to 20 feet, just in case it does something really crazy. So we want to be safe. These are super fun, but if you're reckless and careless, there can be some pretty good consequences. So do keep that in mind. Hey, thanks for watching, everybody. I hope this video was helpful to you. If you have any questions or problems setting your Eachine Wizard or other quadcopter up, leave them in the comments below so that I or someone else will probably be able to help you with troubleshooting or anything like that. If I left anything out, please also let me know, because I want to make sure that this is as together and as easy for people to understand and set up their quadcopter as possible. Anyway, thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to this channel if you found this helpful. Give this video a like, and I'll see you on the next one.